Hey, Max.
Dude, what's happening?
We're at it again.
Yeah.
You know what? This
What?
is episode 27.
Okay. On the way down
You're
here.
so fucking excited.
On the way down
Yeah,
here, I
okay.
was like, is there any way we can start doing this where I am remote? Like, can we get the...
Oh, you want to do a FaceTime podcast?
No, but I want to, like, what if we did a setup where I didn't have to come down here and sit in traffic for 90 minutes and watch a poor, innocent dog on the back of one of those flatbed trucks on the back on the freeway? You know what I'm talking about?
Right, and just
The
kind of
dog
like
was
sloshing
outside.
around back and forth?
Yeah, he was running around, and it was so dangerous. And the guy was flying. What would happen if he had to hit his brakes or something and that critter just flies into the sky? Are they strapped down?
No.
It's making me nuts. And with that
You would have
heat
to stop the
and
car and
people-
rescue the dog.
Yeah. Well, I would. I would get out and do that. So I was thinking, I want to do this from home.
No.
Then I show up and I meet our guest.
We got a
and I'm
special
like,
guest.
You wouldn't have that dynamic.
It wouldn't happen.
If I wasn't here and I was some disembodied fuck back in North Hollywood, there'd be no engagement.
The whole point of me starting this podcast, because I came to you with the
Is
idea.
to bring people together.
Well, I want to be in a room with you.
In a room
I don't
with
want
me.
you online. I
don't
don't
want
want
me
you on
over
fucking
there.
Facebook. I don't want you,
You
in
don't
my
want me over-
bathroom.
Yeah.
I don't want you in my bathroom, by the way.
What have I ever done to your bathroom? If I make a boom boom in anyone's bathroom, which I rarely do,
It's gonna
I
be-
have spritzes.
It's true.
I have wet wipes.
Yes. You've
I'm
got a
I'm
fucking
gem.
garden hose. Yeah,
you
yeah.
want me to boom boom in your...
You're the only guy I know who brings his own bidet to a house.
It's in my bag
I know.
downstairs.
I know it is.
Well, you got to have a clean ass.
Cheers, Max. What are we drinking?
Oh, this is wonderful.
We're drinking some really good wine.
You brought along a Barton Broken Road Viognier from Templeton District. I love Templeton.
Yeah.
That's where my family, not my family, but my wine family, the Sarzatis are. Remember them?
I do remember them.
Yeah, they're there.
Let's get to the important stuff, dude.
Okay.
Happy 27th episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for battling, backseat dogs and fucking...
No, now I'm glad I'm here. But,
Okay.
But I was very upset.
When I was growing up, teenager, about 15, maybe 16, I met a dude, and we bonded on so many things.
At the same high school?
We actually never went to high school together. I'm actually 2 years older than he is.
Okay.
But we bonded on two very important things when you're 16.
Let me guess. Frank Zappa.
No, well, close. I mean, in the same context.
Go ahead.
Music and drugs.
Music and drugs.
Yes, we listened to a lot of music, and we did a lot of drugs.
What drugs did you do?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because I did a lot of it with this dude. And this dude comes from also a very famous family.
Right.
Let me introduce everybody to John Agar the Third.
The third.
Wow.
Welcome, John.
Thank you very much.
Good to
Pleasure
see you,
be here.
dude.
It's a pleasure to be here, man. This is
John's not
definitely
drinking
a trip.
wine. He's drinking Red Bull.
He's fucking sugar-free
He's got
Red
three
Bull.
lined
He's got
up.
3 lined up.
Hey, listen,
He's going to be jacked in about 10 minutes.
unlike you two, wino ain't afraid of nothing except running out of wine, And
you kind of look like a young Don Johnson. Have you gotten that?
Fuck him, Jesus Christ! Are you kidding me? God. I'll go down to my car, see if I have a white jacket somewhere, a white dinner jacket. I'll just take off the shirt and
But he is charismatic and he does have a great voice.
I know
and
he
he
does.
does look like someone that should probably be also on screen.
Well, he's also got a million stories.
Well, let's go back in time.
Let's go back in time. Let me set the context. We met through a mutual friend. We both had a friend named Alan, and Alan was my best friend. Alan knew John. So through Alan, I met John, and we bonded very quickly. And, I didn't know about John's famous dad and all the Hollywood stuff. I just knew the dude was cool, and he had a lot of drugs. So he brought me into his little bubble, and in his bubble, I stayed for a while. And we did a lot of stuff, which we will get to, but I want to get his backstory. John Agar the First. Is your dad the first?
No, actually, he's a junior. So
He's a junior.
His father was John Agar the first.
All right.
And so John Agar Jr., but he just went by John Agar because his father died when he was relatively young. I think my dad was about 12 and his father passed.
All right.
So I never
Okay.
met my grandfather.
Ever.
On my
Oh.
father's side.
Right.
I know where he's buried.
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere. He's still there.
You can go say hi.
Exactly.
Your dad, John Agar, was a fairly famous actor in the 40s and 50s or just 50s?
40s. Well, I mean, I think once you're a famous actor in the 40s, you're a famous actor until the day you die.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, he was a famous actor.
Right.
And he started his career in the 1940s.
Okay.
But he actually it's kind of an interesting story to that, actually. My grandmother, who is actually, she's relatively, related to a fairly famous person as well. My grandmother was Lillian Rogers, and she was actually a first or second cousin to Will Rogers.
Wow.
Will Rogers,
Yeah.
Wiley Post.
Never met a guy I didn't like.
And never go flying with a fucker either.
Right.
But at any rate. So my grandmother husband passed away. She was a widow, and she moved. She inherits the family business, which was a meat packing company in Chicago, and they moved to Beverly Hills. And she buys the house next door to the Temple family. And so my aunt, Joyce, goes to school with Shirley Temple. And my father, who was several years older than her, actually hooks up and meets Shirley Temple as the girl next door.
Really?
Yeah.
But at this time, Shirley Temple, because she started so young, she was a star.
Was relatively, she was one of the most famous
in the world
child actresses of all time.
So she was famous at this time when she's living next door to your dad.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So where was I? Were we talking about
Shirley
him,
Temple
or?
and your dad.
Shirley Temple and my dad. So interesting story again. This is great. You're like Hollywood, legend shit. So my father ends up going to the U.S. Army and U.S. Army Air Corps. He's a physical instructor. When he comes back, my aunt's in school and Shirley are their friends, and my father's just kind of hanging out around the house at the time. So a guy by the name of David O. Selznick, who's the famous producer who did Gone with the Wind, was trying to pick up on my grandma at the time, who was a rich widow living in Beverly Hills next door to the Temples.
Was she kind of hot too?
And she was a good-looking lady for her day, but she's my grandmother, so let's not even go there. But at any rate,
well,
I mean, what the hell? So the long and short of it is that Selznick's trying to pick up on Grandma. Grandma wants no part of it. My dad's hanging around the house because he just got out of the military, like 1946 or whatever, and he's putting he's like the cock block for fucking the Selznick. So Selznick says, "Hey, what are you going to do with your life?" And my father just really wanted to be a golfer or something. Or just a full-time bum and live off Grandma's money, which I would have loved anyway. But he gets in touch with, I guess, so Selznick says, "Hey, you know what? You ought to be an actor. You're a good-looking guy." So he sends him to New York, and he ends up rooming with several other actors, but Kirk Douglas was one of them, and they and they do. He does summer stock and all this stuff, and he's training. And Selznick's trying to put the move on Grandma for this whole year, and she's not having it. She's not having anything to do with it. So he gets back and comes back to L.A., and nothing really happens because Selznick's not getting the juice from Grandma. And so she ends up taking a frickin' cruise to Hawaii, my grandmother, and she meets John Ford's wife, the director, the Western director. And my old man, not doing anything, he's hanging at the house, and she's talking to him, and she's really bad-mouthing Selznick and talking the whole story. And the long and short is that John Ford's wife says, "You know what? Your son sounds like a nice guy, good-looking kid, and you're a great lady. When you get back, we'll see if we can put a screen test together." And she did. And so my father ends up going fresh out of the U.S. Army Air Corps. It was the Army Air Corps at the time. It was no Air Force. Goes into, I believe, Culver City studios in Culver, and does a screen test with John Ford. And John Ford was famous Navy guy. And my old man walks in and he goes, "So, blah, blah, blah. I heard the whole story here. Let's do this test." He goes, "So, you're in the Air Force, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I hear you're in the Navy. Anchors aweigh, sink." And he's just like, no one had ever had the balls to go up against Ford like that ever.
Right.
And one thing led to another. And before you know it, my old man is getting cast in John Ford's Western Ford Apache.
Wow, classic.
First film opposite Henry Fonda and John Wayne.
Wow. And he falls into it. There's no acting classes. There's no working as a waiter trying to have every audition come.
There was some acting classes.
Oh, was there?
That was New York,
right?
right?
Yeah, but it was the cock block for Selznick. He was trying to put the moves
Maybe
on
that's
Grandma.
the secret. You need to be a cock block for somebody.
Or-
But
Well,
Dad
that's
was
it.
training while living in New York, correct?
Right,
John?
but he had no. But and he came back or
Yeah.
whatever. But he had no. Like literally, it's kind of like it's just a family, whatever. It's
Right.
just if he lived next door to a plumber, he might have ended up unplugging the sink or
Right.
something, right?
It's just one of the luck of the draw.
Exactly.
God, there's
So
nothing
that's-
like good karma.
Yeah, that's kind of the family story. That's what I was told.
It's
And then
cool.
of course in between there, my aunt Joyce, his sister, went to school with Shirley, and they started to date, and they saw this big Hollywood jumped in and saw this, and so Selznick ended up doing personal management for my old man and put him into the film, and then they eventually started to work together, and they produced their wedding and all this other crap, and,
Wow.
and they were married, I guess, for 5 years, and
Very
you
cool.
know,
Did they
yeah.
have kids? Anything?
Yeah, they had one daughter named Linda Sue Temple.
Oh, wow.
Or Agar, and
Okay.
then Linda Susan,
And you have a
then-
brother.
and I have a brother. And
What's his name?
Martin David.
But you yourself, you're adopted.
Well, so was my. Well, here it's even more complicated. There you go.
The multi-layers of John Agar
Multi-layers,
the third.
yeah. So yeah, my mom, who raised me, who I consider my mom, my soul, Loretta Barnett. She married my father after he divorced Shirley. She actually was also famous in her own right. My mother was actually in the movie Citizen Kane.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know she was an
Jeez.
actress.
She was. She actually worked with Betty Grable as well.
Cool.
And toured with Grable in World War II. Did movies with Cesar Romero, Betty Grable, something, Schleppfest in the Rockies. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so she had a Hollywood background, dancing and all this. And so she was unable to have children. So in 1958, they went to Texas and they adopted my brother. And in 1964, my aunt, who knew some doctor or something in Glendale, said, hey, there happens to be this other child. And by this time, and my mother was born in 2131, she was like 43 years old. And they're like, no way. And something my mom said, you know what, there's a young girl, she's had a child, and she's going to have a child soon, and will you guys adopt him? And they had no intention of adopting me. And my mom said she picked up the phone, and her sister called again and said, so, Loretta, what are you going to do? And she goes, we'll do it. And it was like one of those things. So
Right.
here I am, I get adopted and then I'll go back. I actually know I knew my birth mother, and my birth father, I knew who he was. I'll get into that if you give me $5. But so imagine this: I go from being put up for adoption, being adopted by not only a famous actor, but given the name the third. Being
That's
given
what I was
the
going to
exact
ask.
same name.
Your brother didn't get the name, you got it.
Exactly, which makes no sense. But
It's a little weird, right?
It is weird. They skipped the first child.
that is
and
strange.
gave you-
Because
and-
maybe John Agar the second was like, no, he's not worthy of the name.
Right.
But once this kid came along, yeah, here he is.
This
There
little
it is.
cute guy comes.
This is number 3.
He's now maybe more my son than the other guy.
Yeah.
Is that kind of true?
Nah, who knows? Listen,
Is your brother a load?
My brother's an amazing guy.
Good.
My
Good.
brother.
You guys are
my-
close.
Extremely close.
Good.
Even though I fucking hated him half my life, I love him now so
Wow.
much I would die from it. I think that happens with age.
Yeah.
But my father, the real strange thing is my father and my brother were very close growing up, very tight, golfing, just all sorts of, things that they were mutual.
Right. But you were
And
too young
I
to do
wasn't.
that.
No, I just wasn't into it.
Okay.
I've never been a big sports fan or anything like that. So I was, close to my mom, and my mom had a fucking great group of really eclectic, artistic friends and shit, and I hung out with them, and so that was it, bonded. But of course, as time goes on, I bonded extremely well with my father, and
Right.
got real close, and
Growing up, did you do a lot of what all the Hollywood kids do? Did you go hang
Yeah, I
out
did a
with
lot of
other
blow.
Hollywood parties and premieres and
Yeah, we did some-
Cary
yeah, we-
Grant comes over for dinner and
not quite Cary Grant, but we definitely. I mean,
Ernest Borgnine maybe?
Definitely. I've met Ernest before. Definitely did a lot of stuff. I mean, you got to remember the thing about, my father's career, it was really huge in the 40s and 50s. Then he was on contract with Universal, did a lot of what become now iconic, legendary films. Clint Eastwood was his understudy
Wow.
at Universal. So Clint Eastwood's very first film role ever was a bit part, and it was either, forgive me here, my film friends are going to be, it was either Revenge of the Creature, The Black Lagoon, which was the second in the series, or it was Tarantula, and I can't remember, it was one or the other, and that was his first role. And so, yeah.
And that's when I start to get excited about your father's career. because when I was reading about John Agar, the actor,
Right.
John's dad,
Yeah.
I started to see all the films, and I had these really surreal flashbacks because I'm a horror junkie. Not so much sci-fi, but I know there were a lot of B movies.
Yeah, I was just a junkie, but no.
Yes. You got to stop saying "just kidding." You're so funny, and then when you say "just kidding," I can gravitate to your comic sensibility.
I don't kid.
You got to cut that out.
Okay, I'll stop it.
Stop that. So it brought me back to when I used to go over. My mom would dump me off at my grandma and grandpa's house. Grandma's upstairs in a coma. My granddad's working insurance all day. He comes home with a 12-case pack of Budweisers. We hit the couch all night long. I have no bedtime. It's just these old black and white movies. I'm telling you, I saw The Mole People multiple times. I saw Revenge of the Creature of the Black Lagoon. I saw Tarantula until the wee hours, until the sun was coming up.
Right.
I was never told to go to bed. And he would just drink Budweisers until he was out. You know what I mean?
That's exactly how I viewed them for the first time. Late night
that
television with nonstop Budweiser. I got to tell you, you mentioned Mole People. Mole People's fucking amazing. He did that movie with Hugh Beaumont, who, if you recall, was Beaver. Leave It to Beaver's dad.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Wally and the Beaver.
Right.
Ward. God. Ward Cleaver. And in that film, I think one of the Carradines was in it. I think John Carradine might have been in it. But at one point, I love that movie, especially as I was in my 20s and enjoying a lot of hallucinogens. And in that movie, they're actually feeding them mushrooms. And I'm thinking about, and I'm on mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, watching my dad with Ward Cleaver eating freaking mushrooms. Now, yeah. See, if you wonder why I'm fucking slightly twisted, or I apologize and I'm just kidding a lot, is because I have a disconnect between reality and fantasy and
Life is better
whatever.
that way.
I know.
You grew
I
up
have
in a very surreal bubble.
It's perfect.
Yes. I remember a very early age. There's certain things and events, we remember in our lifetime. I'm too young to remember Kennedy because I wasn't alive yet.
Right.
But I'm completely, totally on top of the Apollo the moon landing. I remember that as if it was yesterday. I remember watching that on a small TV when our family lived in Studio City, California, and I remember it well. And that same neuron path, that same pathway in my brain, I remember sitting in our living room in Studio City and looking at my dad sitting in his chair, and he used to have a pewter mug that he would drink iced tea. He loved iced tea, and he'd drink iced tea out of a pewter mug. So a big silver pewter mug. And I remember looking at him, and there's my dad, and then I'm looking on the fucking TV, and shit, there's my dad. Mm-hmm. And he's doing stuff on TV, and I'm like, wow. And right there I had there was this epiphanous moment where, there was a mass, like a deep insight and a deep confusion all simultaneously, much like most of my life.
Right. Well,
did he explain to you?
Absolutely. And, I remember to this day, he'd be looking, and here he is. I think he's like on the Virginian, and he's, whipping some Indians or doing some fucking horrific gunfighting or, whatever, or saving some town or whatever it was.
Whatever.
But he'd say, oh, yeah, son, that's make-believe. And I'm thinking, shit, make-believe. That's on TV. And here, remember, oh, that's all make-believe. This is the same time I'm watching the same era where I watched the moon landing. Make-believe. You would think I would grow up to be like one of those moon landing deniers,
right.
But I believe we went
flat
there.
earther or something.
Yeah, I believe I've been on too many plane trips to not even be a flat earther too. Okay. But at any rate, yeah, it was very surrealistic. Listen, if I'm going to say anything, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories of that time frame and of that era is that there was an old show, and anybody here in the room or listening, you guys even might remember the old show. There was a guy named Bob Barker.
Sure.
And we all know him from Price is Right.
Yeah.
But before that, he had shows on TV. One of them was called Truth or Consequences.
I remember that one too.
Black and white. Okay.
Yeah, back in the day.
And I guess my father and him were, as I mentioned earlier, if my father hadn't become an actor, he probably would have became a golfer. My father was one hell of a golfer. And, I never could understand the fucking game. I'm a lot like George Carlin. It's like, you got the fucking ball, pick it up, put it in your pocket. There's a great freaking club over here. Beautiful drinks, 25 bourbons. Yeah. Let's go there.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I never got it. But I'll never forget this. I love this story. I'm going to make myself laugh. I remember we're in the living room again, and my mom's out doing her thing, and there's some big fancy car pulls up on the driveway. Big old fucking boat. These, if anybody remembers those days, cars were made out of 48 tons of steel. I mean, they were fucking huge. You could live in these things. Pulls up. Some guy walks out of the car. I recognize him. He's wearing the fucking loudest, most obnoxious plaid golf outfit you've ever seen. Like something out of Caddyshack. Worse than, Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. And the guy start walking up the step. My father kind of peeks out the drape. Total, just like a sitcom thing. And he goes, oh. He goes, son? And here I am. I'm had to be 5, 6 years old. He goes, son, tell the man at the door that I'm not home. And I remember, okay. And knocking on the door. And I open the door, and he goes, hello, young man. Is your father home? And I look Bob Barker right in the eye, and I say, my dad told me to tell you that he's not here. Total fuck up.
That's
anyway,
so funny.
I remember that. The funny thing is, I remember this. About you asked me about celebrities and people I've met. I've met hundreds of celebrities in social situations with my parents. The funny thing is, that's one of the things I remember. Another thing I remember had nothing to do with my father. One time I was drinking and had one of my many drinking accidents in Burbank, California, and I was at St. Joseph's Hospital, and I'm getting a hand set. I actually had broken a hand. I'm having my hand set. They did a terrible job. I should have sued them. But I'm standing there holding my hand. All of a sudden, there's kind of a little rush flash at the door, and it's like, somebody famous is coming in. And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, I'm 6'3", and I'm standing, I'm a pretty tall guy. All of a sudden, this thing bumps into my knees, and I freaking look down, and who the fuck is it? It's Hervé Villachez, tattoo from Fantasy Island. Wow. And he looks right up at me, and I'm looking down at him, and he grabs his stomach, and he goes, my stomach. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm just telling you, these little surreal things. Imagine this. I go to bed at night and I think of the past, and I have fucking Bob Barker and Hervé Villachez sort of hovering around these epic memories of my old man.
Wow.
How frightening
Makes
is that?
you want to do drugs.
Yes.
Wow.
What doesn't make you want to fucking
Really?
do drugs?
Well, that's actually, I was going to springboard off that. Those are amazing stories. And it's amazing to see you grow up, you're 5 and you're telling Bob Barker to fuck off. And
Which is essentially it. I thought that was
pretty much. You should have said, you can stay if the price is right.
Yeah, right.
I guess you got to fast forward like 10 years. You grow up, you go to junior high school. Then I kind of meet you. I meet you through a mutual friend, and I didn't know who your dad was. When I met him, he was kind of an older man. He must have been in his 60s when I came.
Oh, I mean, he was born in 1921. So
right, yes.
So now we're talking what, like early 70s now?
Yeah,
Where are we
so
at?
I guess he was
so
in
we're
his
talking
50s.
70s. Yeah.
And he was always very nice to me, but I have to admit, I didn't really know what really drunk was at that time. But I always thought that he was kind of always, on something when I met him. He was always seemed to be a little sloshy in a way.
That's interesting.
Really nice.
My father's a recovering alcoholic
Really?
for 45 years.
Because I don't
So
know
why
why.
does it say on
fascinating.
Wikipedia that he got into all these bad drunk driving accidents?
1940s. He had one in the 1940s.
So when I knew him, he was not drinking.
no,
He
not
wasn't
at all.
drinking.
Interesting. Because that's the impression I got.
Because I assumed that
Maybe
there
he
was,
was
a
just
darkness
tired.
there.
I don't know.
You're saying
Maybe he
gregarious
was
stories
sleepy.
about
You know, I never met Charles Black, but I imagine that fucker after marrying Shirley might have been fucked up too. I'm just saying. You might have met Charles Black. Oh, hi, Mr. Black, and you go, "Hey, Lorenzo, what's up there, young fella?"
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But no, my
he was
father
always
wasn't-
really nice, but him and your mom were
But this
treating
is
me like
really good news
really
to
nice.
hear, because my perception was we're going to get to some tragedy with the drunk driving, and I was comparing it to when you were having accidents.
Here's the amazing thing about that. Listen, Robert Downey Jr., the guy fucking shoots heroin, does blow, ends up in some fucking kid's room in Malibu.
Crazy.
And, it's like, it's great. It's like, he goes to Betty Ford, and
Right.
it's fantastic.
You get the second chance, and
It's
he's huge.
excellent. It's
Right.
like no big deal. Back in those days,
Right.
I want to call it like the pre-Victorian, I don't know, just the moral compass
Right.
of the
Where
time.
the image had to be
the
so
moral
pure.
compass of the time. For one thing, think about this. For better or worse, my father drank being with Shirley Temple. Now, I don't know about you, But I've been with some women in my life that were a little spoiled. And I can only imagine what it would have been like being married to a woman who was given like one of the largest diamonds, who hung out with heads of state, was doted over her whole life. I can only imagine.
It would be ruinous.
I can only imagine what that would have been like. My father was kind of a sloshy, simple Midwestern guy, man.
Right.
He was a guy from Chicago.
Yeah.
He was a U.S. Army Air Corps physical instructor. He was a... he wasn't a rocket scientist. He was just a simple sort of salt of the earth guy.
And he wasn't Mr. Hollywood either. It wasn't what he aspired to be.
Right. So I can only imagine what that would have been like. But I guess
So he was a good dad to you, though. Sounds like he was a great dad to you.
My father and mother were like amazing.
They were really nice people.
This is spectacular, man.
Yeah. I wish I. Well, I don't wish. I mean, it's like I don't. There's a lot of shit that I did and put them through in my lifetime,
right.
and it would be nice maybe to have an excuse. Of course, I don't lean on excuses anymore, but I'm just saying, oh, yeah, they beat me. They put me in a closet.
Yeah.
They made me watch episodes of The Virginian over or whatever. No, they were
We had to watch Gunsmoke for 10 hours.
I will say this. They got me, and I'm definitely, well, I'm not too introverted, obviously, and I'm not small, and I'm not, I'm not quiet. And I can only imagine what it'd been like to have these two kind of like literally, Ward and June Cleaver.
Yeah,
they were literally like and a little older to have me. I mean, a complete fucking psycho. I mean, I was a psychopath. As Lorenzo says, here we were. How did you meet the guy? Well, I'm 2 years older than the guy, and John brings some drugs to the party. Like, hey, man, it's like they always say, like, hey, we really don't want you hanging out with that boy. It's like. And a lot of the time I look back and think, wow, man, I was that boy. Like, I was the one. You don't want your kid hanging out with me, because I'm the one that goes, hey, you know what? Like, look at that. Look at that state. Hey, let's go throw some lemons at that boss.
Were you a grimy, long-haired bad boy?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I went.
You were the bad seed.
A little bit, but at the same token, though, I think I've always had a pretty good heart. I just literally, always been a bit of listen, I went to private school originally. Growing up, and St. Michael's Episcopalian Academy, right next to Harvard Boys. Okay. And I just remember, at a very early age, just knowing just a lot of the hypocrisy and the bullshit. Just I grew up watching the Nixon Watergate thing. I just kind of knew that, you see that drugs were. I remember they brought a big thing of drugs to the school, that private school that I was at, and they're going, one whiff of this marijuana cigarette will turn you into a raving maniac. And then I meet this hot frickin' blonde chick, and she's like smoking this marijuana cigarette and doing things with her, lips I've never seen since. But anyway, I mean, and you just see this hypocrisy. So I think I've always had a bit of a rebellious thing to me.
And the one thing is that even just physical space, when I met you, they had a really nice house in North Hollywood, but there was a pretty cool guest house in the back.
Yeah.
Where you could just do your own thing, and that's where you hung out. You had the guest house in the back.
Oh, dear Lord.
And that was like a breeding ground
with his own separate entrance.
For debauchery. So you're 15, 16 with your own private entrance and your own little guest house.
That's all.
A lot of shit happens in that room.
Famously known as the Black Door.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went through the black door for many nights of
wow,
harrowing shit.
Some shit definitely went down there. But that's another thing. It's like, listen, I'm 55 right now, okay, and I'm just telling you, if I had to watch a kid of any age, it'd be like, look, I'd watch them leave the house. I just really don't have time to fuck with you. It's kind of like, don't set yourself on fire. Don't kill anybody. Call me if you're in jail. I just feel like my parents, just like I said, they didn't. It wasn't that they were. It's just they were too old at that point. Like, listen, they go to bed at 10 o'clock. I'm getting up at 11 o'clock. It's like whatever. So I can imagine that.
Are you a father?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how many kids do you have?
I'd rather not talk. I have a daughter and a
Oh,
granddaughter.
sure.
No, I just rather leave them out of it.
Leave them out of it.
Leave them out of it.
I just didn't know if there was going to be a John Agar the Fourth. That's all.
Not that we know of.
Okay.
Not legally.
Not that anybody's actually owning up to.
You want some more of that?
I do. I need some more wine.
Yeah, imagine this. I'm doing this without drinking. You know, when you imagine when I did drinking, and I drank. You know, my father got a rap for. I was on that drunk driving thing about him. Back then, we were talking publicity, and that's the thing. In this day, he marries Shirley Temple, America's sweetheart. For whatever reason, they divorce.
Right.
Well, you can imagine some people were not very happy about that. And no matter what happened, if she was the fucking raging bitch or if he was the complete psycho, alcoholic madman, didn't matter. There was some real political shit that went down. And one thing happened when my father had his drunk driving, not only, and you read about it online, when he had the drunk driving, it was turned on him to politically kind of screw him, to publicly screw him.
Wow.
And there's pictures of my father at Wayside Honor Ranch, which is Wayside jails to this day, but it was an honor ranch back then, where, on a shit tractor. Like literally like how, like, look at this movie star on back of, manure tractor. He could never work again because he drove a tractor in poop. I mean, it's like he can't fight fake aliens and Gilman in a tub no more. It's like, you can't fight artificial spiders in the desert.
Right.
I mean, come on,
Total
man.
smear campaign.
It's just kind of a screwed up thing. So, needless to say, my father's career took some hits on that, but he maintained his working relationship for years. As a matter of fact, later in years, I got to kind of go and hang out with him on some of the sets, and he worked with some fucking great people. As a matter of fact, one of the best experiences I had, probably around 1990-ish, was my old man did a thing with John Carpenter, the director, was a huge fan of my father's. There was actually even in talks of doing a remake of The Creature, and had talked to my father about doing something. But what he did do was he made a trilogy for Showtime called Body Bags. And part of the trilogy, David Cronenberg, Roger Corman, and forgive me, there's another director, they all wanted to be in it. My father played a doctor who does an eye surgery, puts an eye from a convicted murderer into a professional baseball player. And I got to go on the set of this movie. The professional baseball player was played by Mark Hamill.
Oh, cool.
So my father worked with Mark, and I got to hang out and go to a party at Carpenter's house and meet Mark Hamill. I actually sat with Mark after, this is in between, after the first 3 Star Wars and in between now, and just hang out in fucking John Carpenter's backyard and just have a meal with him. Just have drinks and a meal and just hang out. Just a nice, great guy. I think back today, I should have had him signing every fucking inch of my body. And mimeographing
every movie poster you could find.
But it was great. That was one thing. Then he did another thing. He did a thing called Fear with Ali Sheedy, who was big in the Brat Pack, and he did another movie where my father plays like a serial killer. And at 70 freaking years old, he takes a shotgun blast, special effects, and does it him fucking self.
Right.
Cracks 2 ribs and goes and takes another take.
Wow.
He does another film with a director by the name of Steve DeJarnay. Did a film called Cherry 2000 with Melanie Griffith called Miracle Mile. And the movie was with stars Anthony Edwards and Mira Wenningham. My father plays, and my father plays Ivan, the grandfather.
God, yeah. Oh, I absolutely remember
that. If you haven't seen,
I want to revisit all these films.
I want to see that one,
Lorenzo. If you haven't seen that, because my father's a little older then, but you got to see that because
he was a badass.
Very intense, surreal,
interesting
film.
Wow, interesting.
With an apocalyptic ending. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and then he did another film called Nightbreed with Craig Sheffer.
Yes.
Where he gets tied up with Christmas lights and set on fire or some shit. But it's like, so he had all these parts, he had these roles all the way up until
And are you
the time
thinking,
he passed.
my dad, and I love him so much, but he's a badass. My dad is this really cool, badass guy.
When you really say it that way, my father, fortunately, for whatever reason, didn't beat me senseless growing up. But my father was a physical instructor in the U.S. Army Air Corps.
Really?
A physical instructor.
Not
so
like
in other
a
words,
drill sergeant kind of guy.
Like a drill sergeant.
Really?
He's the guy that's physically making sure that you can rip the fucking head off the enemy when he's taking your gun and your bayonet.
He was so docile and sweet when I knew him.
My father was
a badass.
Badass in the sense that he was physically bad.
Right.
But my dad, God, was the most just calm, peaceful, just nice guy. But I think that's what comes when you're a badass. You don't need to act like a badass. If you really can
Right.
If you are a badass,
Right.
you don't need to, oh, come here, pilgrim.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, he wasn't
I'm
insecure.
just
He
saying-
knew who he was.
Nah, but yeah,
That's
he was
cool.
he was a good guy, man. He was just
That's great.
I'm so grateful to have had parents like them.
Well, probably gave you the basis to be where you are now, given a lot of the avenues that you went down after, let's be honest, we were friends for like 3-4 years, like, I don't know, 15 to 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
I went off to college, and I actually I got out of drugs. We did a lot of drugs, and we shared that
Are we
in
going to
common.
find out what the fucking drugs are? Is
Well,
it everything?
Well, we did some coke, and we did some pills, mostly a lot of pot,
A lot
and
of pot.
hash, Thai stick.
Are you still enjoying the benefits of cannabis now in California?
Well, I could enjoy. Listen, I don't drink or smoke. Do
So you
drugs
don't do
anymore.
anything?
I don't do anything. No.
But he went into it after I left, and I gave it up to be. I wanted to be I couldn't play drums on it,
Right.
And I realized if I keep on doing drugs, I'm not going to be a good musician. So I better quit. So I did that. I quit. John didn't, and then we kind of parted ways. I went off to college, and I got really into music, and it was nothing personal. We just kind of didn't have the drug thing in common, but. You can tell your story,
Yeah, I want to
It's
know
real
how
simple.
you-
Look,
you sort of went down a different road.
My thing is real simple. In around the 1981-82, during the Colombian crime wave, right? Don Johnson's show, right? During the, hey, do I look like, we need a camera in here. Do I look like a young Don Johnson? Holy shit. Anyway,
Do you see Don Johnson?
Absolutely not.
absolutely not.
Not even close.
Like, you look like my Uncle Morty, so
You know,
shut the hell up.
Maybe
I didn't know saying you look like Don Johnson.
not
was
at
an
all.
insult.
No, maybe a little Don Knotts, but that's it.
Go ahead.
So, God, I just had a total. That laugh is insane. I thought Chester Cheetah was sneaking up on me for a minute. Excellent.
Excellent, yes. So, go on.
Okay, there we go. So my drug thing sort of started during the Colombian crime wave, right? What happened was just real simple. We did some blow. I think when we did blow, when we were growing up, 16, 17, it was about 100, 120 a gram. Well,
And we had no
for
money.
we had no money. We had to steal money out
Fucking-
of purses and whatever.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Anyway, what happened in my story is that I all of a sudden at around the same time when Coke was running really good cocaine, not this benzene washed shit, but this Peruvian flake, ether washed, amazing medical chemistry, God, cocaine was coming in, and I was getting it at like 1/3 the cost. I was able to get bulk at 1/3, and being a kind of a fucking son of an old Hollywood actor and a bit of a fuck up and a bit of a rebel at heart, I thought being a coke dealer would be a really great thing. I
Entrepreneurial work.
I thought that would be a great
getting it.
idea.
Yes.
So
I'm going to be a businessman.
Needless to say, there was a time that it really worked well, but it started off my sort of, my relationship with drugs and alcohol, which, look, it's quite frankly, I consider myself a recovering addict. Some people, 8 out of 10 people can do things, right? And it doesn't affect them. 2 out of 10 have like an allergy or have something else going on. And I just happen to be one of those 2 out of 10. For a lot of years, drug and alcohol were like the solution to all my problems, not the cause. Like they were actually, I used drugs to numb another part of my head that, so I wouldn't say they were a problem. I had the problem. And I just become one of these people that just can't drink or use. But I had some springboards there. Like I said, I was getting massive amounts of cocaine in the 80s, and you guys all know the stories. It was the Reagan era, just say no, but everybody was high. And,
Right.
it was like, listen, I grew up in the Valley, and, one thing led to another. As time went on, I would tap dance in and out of different professional endeavors, which I've done well. I mean, I've worked for some, technical companies and, technology and broadcast television control and so on and so forth. But I always had this pattern of fucking things up. And I'd look around me and I'd go, why are things screwed up? Like, this doesn't happen to so-and-so and this doesn't happen to so-and-so. It came down to a point in my life where I realized I derailed myself at critical points in my life, and it was usually due to large amounts of coke or opiates or alcohol or whatever, or just inappropriate timing. See, the one thing is somebody normal has a good sense of timing. sit down with a friend, have a little podcast, drink a little wine, hang out. Whereas an addict goes, hey, it's 2 a.m. and, I got to be at work at 8 a.m., but there's a half a pound of fucking cocaine over here. It's
Right.
like, what are we going to do? And so that's my story. Just at some point,
You were functional, but you fucked up every job you
highly
had.
functional, but at some point it becomes dysfunctional. And as I've come to kind of find out that I'm wired, most addicts, alcoholics are kind of wired differently. We're wired differently in the way we think, the way we feel, the way we emotionally process things. And for a lot of years, the solution to me, my problem, was the drugs. I could use enough drugs to get me high. I could use enough drugs to mellow me out. I could do the right balance or the right chemistry set, solution to keep me numb. Or do you follow?
I do.
But at some point, that stops working. You
Right.
put so much. I equate my.
You think you can have a balance,
He's
but you
doing
really
amazing
can't.
handwork, by the way.
Yes, he is.
I equate my drug use.
Right, he could be a rapper, actually.
I equate my drug use to the old Disneyland ticketing system. Does anybody remember this?
You were
Where
on an
used to-
e-ticket all the time,
Where
right?
you used to have A,
Yeah.
B. A ticket is like where you walk in, some guy kicks you in the fucking side of the head. B ticket gets a little better as you progress. I've just kind of ran out. At some point, I ran out of my e-tickets. It stopped being functional. And it started to where the drugs actually was what you see with a lot of people. The drugs actually started to drive me down. It was really clear that, I was smoking opium and just doing all sorts of crazy shit. It was real clear that one day I just woke up and realized, hey, the reason you're divorced, the reason you don't get along, or the reason you get fired is this shit that you did when you were fucked up. Or, you know what I mean? And at some point I realized that there wasn't the world doing anything to me, and that there was something I was doing to myself. And so I found the solution. I mean, I found, I sought treatment and I stayed in treatment. Not that I hadn't been exposed to treatment many times in my life. There is, listen, I've had some legal things happen to me. My parents would throw me in a feckin' fancy rehab. I'd beat the legal thing, I'd come out. Same thing, kind of a dance in and out. But God willing, I'm very happy. These last 9.5 years now, I'm very pleased.
That's great. And you're alive. You didn't, have a heart attack, a stroke, and you didn't OD.
So 9.5 years ago, you were done with all of it.
Well, that's
You
how it
came out the other
Is
side.
that through
Yeah.
therapy? Did you finally have a rehab center that clicked?
I went to a rehab center and I fucking actually did what I was told.
Okay, so you finally took it seriously.
I'd been to some of the best in the world and I never did what I was told. I finally did what I was told. There's an old saying says I became sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And I just changed everything. But not until, and like I said, I didn't think I would talk about it much, but I guess it's, like I say, I ended up literally dancing with every aspect of drug abuse, from the fun and the socially cool, like a couple lines and some clubbing, to literally injection. I mean, I did everything. I fucking did everything. I've been in jail. I've been arrested. I've had, luckily I never did any long, serious time, but I had a lot of experiences, some assault charges, just had some really wild things, had some charges happen to me that could have landed me in jail for long-term time, and was lucky enough to beat them, having to do with substances, possession, sales, so on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds
but
like if you had 9 lives, I think 7 are used up.
as I said,
You're on 2
as
now.
I said, like the e-tickets, I've pulled all the damn e-tickets out of my book,
Wow.
and I'm lucky. But yeah.
But it's great that you're at this place now at 55 years old. That
Yeah.
you're in a good place.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, listen, I'm here right now. I mean, that's what the real key to everything is. I'm in the moment. I live for the now. I'm like, yesterday's gone, tomorrow's not here. I live in the present. That's why we call it a gift.
It's very
like
zen.
today.
That's a very good place to be.
It
Is
pretty
there a
zen.
darkness inside you? Do you go about life like highs and lows still without the crutch?
If you keep looking at me like that, I'm going to slap the shit out of you. Oh, no, Max? Not at all, man. No. I obviously, listen, we already kind of talked about when you got fucking Bob Barker in your face at 5 years old, you're going to be a little off kilter. When your father was fucking married to Shirley Temple and was starring with fucking Henry Fonda and John Wayne when he was 26, and you're at the supermarket, and some pretty decent little lady comes running up, grabbing on your dad's pant leg, and it throws things off. So being an addict, I guess, like I say, I'm a firm believer that it's, as I said before, the problem that existed in me existed prior to the drugs or alcohol. That the drugs and alcohol I used over the course of my life were the things that I used to control my symptoms.
Right.
They were the measure that controlled it. They controlled me. Like when I say, like, because I had such extremes of anger or extremes of depression or whatever it might have been, I used them to balance me out. So when you ask me if I'm darker, probably no darker than you. I mean, how many people did you want to kill on the way over here on the freeway?
Yeah.
Right? And another thing, at the beginning of our podcast, you guys were talking about the dog.
Yeah.
And that's horrible. I love animals. I totally love them. And if I see somebody, but I also realized, I'm a follower of politics and the law. Do you know they just passed a law in California? That
7 years.
Roadkill.
Don't
No,
think,
you can
roadkill.
pick up
You mean
roadkill.
I thought it was 7 years for animal cruelty.
That too. So but here on one hand, you can now pick up roadkill and eat it. And on the other hand, if you beat up the animal before you kill it and eat it, it's 7 years. It's very strange,
Right.
but I'm definitely an advocate.
But you're free of drugs and alcohol, and you're happy.
You're a happy
so
man.
I'm just trying to get my
or
mind
happier,
around.
I should say.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, listen.
As we go down the fucking toilet in this godforsaken hellhole administration we're suffering under, these monstrous things happening, it's amazing that you're still
Do you want to get real?
on the up and up.
Listen, this is funny, but it's not funny. So this is real. But if you can get real about it, I worked for a luxury website for a while. It was one of the number one luxury websites in the world, and I worked for that prior to my last experience in getting clean. I abused this fucking company and this boss like a fucking like a cheap prostitute, which I've met many of. But at any rate, so I got a good piece of money. I did a huge deal with one of the major car manufacturers of Germany, hundreds of thousands of dollars with the large advertising agency, and cashed out. And the guy at this agency was kind of fucking done with me. And I literally, the long and short of it is, I went and I made the decision in like whatever, just I guess it was 2009, that paying for an apartment and paying for insurance and all this stuff was really eating into my fucking drugs. And I made a conscious decision.
Fuck rent.
To go and just live on the streets because
Did you really?
Because I had disability payments. I had money coming in from annuity, and I had this big lump sum, and I made the decision. This is where my drugs had taken me, and that just rent was just way too much fucking money when I could be putting all that into drugs and getting high and partying and doing my thing. And it was during that experience. So I guess I had one point I was going to say is that like what I discovered during my journey of doing some living on the streets as a quote unquote homeless guy. Of course, I was a little higher level homeless because I had a little more funding coming in, right? But what I discovered was really strange and, maybe topical, is that about 1/3 of the people that I ran into were just fucking stupid. They just couldn't, you could give them a pack of money and an apartment, they would fuck the thing up in a month. The other third were severely mentally ill. They were getting Jesus messages and they thought they were the fucking Pope and whatever, they Hare Krishna or whatever. They were and then the rest were maybe let's do quarter. And the rest were just fucking drug addicts. Wow. And once you addressed the two things, right? I mean, and when I say the stupid, I mean, I'm probably wrong, but some people just had a bad thing. And once
they had no tools to make decisions.
They had no tools, and once you're down, you think about this. If you're on the street and you're homeless, if you ever look at homeless, because I have both. I have good and evil in me. Mm-hmm. I'll walk by a homeless guy and I'll think, fuck you just want to get a bag. And the other time I think, oh my God, I know how hard it is for you just to shave. Just to shave today. If you needed to shave. I was
going to ask you what a typical day for you was.
It was insane. I would sleep in a car, hide in a side street, or I'm sleeping in a car. Then I'd go to a public bathroom that I knew of and kind of do the sponge bath and shave or whatever. Then I'd go out and I'd call my connection. Then I'd call my connection. I'd get high. And then I'd call the connection again. Then I'd get high again. Then I would go eat something, usually something cheap. Then I'd get some, and it was just a repeat and rinse, repeat.
But you had a car, so you were sleeping in the car.
Yeah, I had a car. I just chose not to register it for a year, and it was crazy, man.
But
you must have been scared the entire time.
I wasn't.
Scared.
Do you know what's really
What
funny?
was your weapon of defense in the car?
Oh, we're not going to go there. But I am my own weapon of defense. Okay. But what I will say is this: is that what I'm going to really get really real here.
Okay.
Because I've been totally fake this whole time. Who the hell who's John Agar? Never heard of this motherfucker. The fear that I had felt my whole life of living in a home, of paying rent, of keeping a good career and a job, that was my fear. When I had none of that anymore and I was able to survive on the street, I became fearless. Oh. I lost all my fear.
Wow.
I lost all my fear because the worst thing I could fucking imagine was not having, a home, a bed, a TV. And when I threw all that shit away, and by choice, it wasn't like, oh my God, literally something freed me up. Then as time went on, I realized how fucked up it was.
Right.
And I just realized how insane the fucking habit trail, the rabbit, the merry-go-round of my drug use. And it was so obvious. Listen, anybody that's addicted severely to opiates, it's no joke. Look, cocaine, methamphetamine, alcohol. Well, alcohol could pretty much kill you too. But you could pretty much get off, you just need to detox and get away from them. Then there's the mental mind fuck of it. But literally, heroin, you're literally physically sick.
Right.
Opium, you're physically sick. Opiates, Oxycontin, all that shit. And when you have that happen, when you realize that, hey, I'll tell you, I was working for a very large external hard drive manufacturer in Beverly Hills. Robertson Boulevard. I've got an office right there overlooking Beverly Hills, and I'm smoking heroin every day. And one day I wake up, I don't have any heroin. And I'd been introduced to this stuff kind of innocuously. One day I woke up, and I didn't have any. And at the time I was calling it opium. I guess that takes away the sting. Yeah. I didn't have it, so I called in sick. No big deal. I got sick time. And as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to sit here at home feeling like shit today. I might as well call the opium guy and get some opium balls and smoke them while I'm at home. This can't hurt me. And I called and I got them. I went and picked them up. You've probably seen it, Chasing the Dragon, right? I get some heroin. I get home. I'm smoking it. The instant I take a hit of this shit, I feel great. I could conquer the world. That time my eyes caught my own eyes in the mirror and I realized you are an addict. And that's when things started to, but I had this is prior to my job with the luxury company, and this is prior to, so you still have some insane decision making, but it's really all based, it's very selfish. It's based on I don't really give a fuck. I say when I was using, I wouldn't piss in your ass if your fucking guts were on fire, right? Now I would gladly put out your fire, and I care.
So you will piss on my ass now?
Pretty much.
Okay. One thing I'm getting, actually, one thing I'm not hearing in a very interesting way, is that as much shit as you did, you're owning up to your shit. You never once said you were a victim of anything. So that's in some way. I mean, it's actually very,
yes, sir, you are
very
correct.
strong. Well, you're not a victim, and you're not playing the victim. At least whatever shit you went through, you're owning it. And you know that all of the decisions are yours, which is a pretty amazing mindset. Even though you're in that drug-infused stupor, you never played the victim, which is pretty interesting.
Oh, thanks. No, I appreciate that. Listen, we are all the product of our experiences up until this point now, today. And, obviously there are some things called luck. There are some things called preparation. What do they say? I think what is the old saying? Is luck is where presentation and preparation or whatever meets propagation. Whatever, I forget what it is. Prostitution, which is, I'm a firm advocate and believe that prostitution should be legal everywhere. But at any rate, it already is technically. But no. Yeah. I digress. My friends know. Look, some of my friends, I told you the game. One of my friends, we have a. They think I'm fucking hilarious, which I have no idea why. But we actually named our clan. We have a gaming clan, and it's called Hookers and Blow, but in Latin. Perfect. But in Latin. So, and they get a kick out of it. Like I say, look, excuse me. I wouldn't change anything that's happened to me, although. Hindsight is 20/20. I wish I could have done it earlier and changed earlier, but I didn't. So I didn't.
But you're
So
still a young
that's
guy.
it.
You're only 55 years old. You
Yeah,
got a lot
that's
of life
true.
ahead of you to do whatever you want.
We're not talking about the daughter, but are we allowed? Is there a wife?
No, I'm divorced.
Okay,
but
you're-
no, there's
got
a
it.
but actually her name is Laura, and I love her to death. We are closer now than when we were married, and
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, what can I say? Do
you live alone?
Yeah, well, I live alone. I have a 2-bedroom apartment. I rent the other room out to a lovely young man who is
Okay.
a USC PhD grad student
Okay.
in computer science.
Okay.
And
And where are you
that's-
working, if you can say?
yeah, sure. I work for a major digital advertising agency.
Oh, cool.
I formerly worked with the, my trail of, when I was getting clean and sober in a treatment center, I actually applied for a position. This is after I had worked for the luxury company, which was major advertising.
And you applied in the treatment center?
While I was living in a treatment center in Koreatown, I applied for a job at an ad agency in San Pedro, which turned out to be Walker & Walker Advertising, where I was hired by 1-800-THE-LAW-2 and Los Defensores, where I was over-excelled at what I did. I was excellent. I was there for 4 months, and what happened is the Marianne Walker, the one that's on the TV, at the time was trying to open up Nevada and Chicago, and she hired 2 people to do it. And at the time, they decided, we're not going to do it. Like, they're not going to do that. So we got, laid off, which was fine. That was the first. I was still living in a treatment center, but I was taking a bus every day from Koreatown to San Pedro and back every day. Insane.
That is insane.
So I get an incredible review from them. The VP and everybody writes up, this guy's fucking amazing. The only reason he left is because we're not doing this other project. And so while I'm in this treatment center, I think, well, maybe I'll try getting a sales job, as I'm good at sales. So I work just apply for a job at the LA Times. I didn't realize what it was. It just said, hey, we're looking for outside reps, blah, 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 yada, yada. And I apply. And, obviously this is Tribune Corporation at the time. Tribune Media was the second largest media company in the world at the time. And the guy calls me back. And I go down there and I interview with them. I'm at the table with the general manager, the vice president and everything. And they say, great, listen, we're going to have you come in. We're going to have you in an outside position. You're going to need to drive your car. And I go, oh, hey, I'm sorry. I don't drive. I don't have a car. So it's too bad, blah, blah, blah. They go, really? I go, yeah, I go, this is great. I would love to work here. You guys are fantastic. I really blah, blah, blah. I leave, and the next day I get another call, and it's the thing. And I had to buy a suit for this interview. I didn't have a suit. I was living in a treatment center and whatever. I get a call back, and it's the HR guy, and Scott, and he says, hey, can you come back in? I'm thinking, what the fuck? Did I leave that little handkerchief bullshit out of the suit there or something? Like, what did I do? They call me back. They like me so much that they actually had a position open in their corporate accounts division, and they said, look, would you be interested? Would you consider taking this? And I said, yeah, I'd consider it. They go, well, look, we're having an interview with the manager tomorrow. I go, okay. So I go back and interview with the manager. I said, yeah, I'd consider it. I go there, and I'm talking to him, and his name is Sean. We're good friends to this day. He's no longer there, but he's describing the job to me. And I'm thinking to myself, excuse me, sir, excuse me, why aren't we talking about what I bring to the table and who I am? He goes, we're just trying to see if you'll take this job because the VP said to hire you, said to hire you. Wow. And I'm thinking, man, I live in a treatment center. I've got mass fucking shit on my record, bad credit. I had credit 100 credit score, negative. It was horrible. And I get this job. I work at fucking Times about 3 years, and I was the quarterly earner.
Wow.
Of a team of 250. I was one of the top earners.
That's fantastic.
And
are you thinking to yourself, wow, look how far I've come. Look where I was in this treatment center. Now you're, going up, not the ladder, but you're just at a better place. Was that part of the...
Your personality has to get you everywhere, right?
you know, it's
You're a good
attitude.
people
It's
person.
unusual.
But was that
You're
the
really
first-
good with people.
Yeah.
You're interesting.
And you're
not
sure
some
of yourself.
Snora.
Do you know what it was? Well, that's funny you say that. It's like,
But
sure
it's also
of
a
yourself.
combination of being real and a little bit of bullshit. You know how to bullshit pretty well?
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. You know, you have to make it colorful and entertaining, I guess, to
Yeah.
some extent. But I guess what's really funny when you say that, yes, when I'm sharing with you two, and you're my old friend, and I've just met you, and you're a fucking voiceover guy selling potato chips. No, amazing, which is amazing. I'm like, oh my god. I told you I have a friend that was a voiceover guy. I know what it entails. It's an amazing career. You guys are artistic. So when I look at what happened and how it happened, I guess. I guess, yeah, it's pretty much a miracle. It's like I went from fucking living in a car doing dope every day to getting in a treatment center to working for a corporation like Los Angeles Times. I mean, that's a huge freaking name. It's an American.
Right.
It's an institution. Here I was.
I'm still a hard copy subscriber to the Times.
There you go.
That's amazing. I've sold.
You're one of the
ads.
10 left.
So, and here I was selling ads and pages, and I'd get it home and I'd open the paper, and these are my clients, and blah blah blah. So yeah, it was amazing, but I also felt like humbled. Like I felt humbled. I felt there was like it wasn't me. That there was something else at play.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I also
I mean,
say
not
that,
higher power stuff in a way, or
yeah, maybe you could say that, or just I don't know. But I'm not gonna listen. You know, doesn't God deserve a television set? You know, doesn't God deserve a Ferrari? I mean, I don't know. I can't equate it. I could just say that it wasn't me. Like, do you feel good about it? Like, I think it's amazing. Like, yeah, look at it from outside, it was fucking crazy. It was amazing. I get this job at Walker Advertising. I'm wondering the law too. I think this is great. I'm doing lots of sales with attorneys, making great money. All of a sudden, I was able to bank $32,000 in 4 months.
nice.
Yeah, from
And
living
I'm
in a
sorry,
treatment
by
center.
now you have a car again, right? Because you were sleeping in your car.
Well,
then
no,
you went to the interview. You didn't have a car.
Well, I sold the car when I went into recovery
Right.
for cigarettes. I needed
geez.
cigarettes.
So how are you getting around town?
Oh, I was bussing it. It was amazing. It was insane.
RTD? Or is it
RT.
Metro now?
Oh, Metro. It was a goddamn gas. I was on the fucking, on the subway and just in the mix. And here, listen, all my life, drugs and no drugs and the whole thing. I always had good cars, Corvettes and Z's, and just always had great cars. And all of a sudden, when I did this dive, I was living in a Blazer. I bought the Blazer because I needed something to sleep in. I didn't want to be cramped into a freaking
that makes sense.
in a Honda. So I sold the Blazer because, of course, but I did the whole trip. That was part of my recovery was literally living on the ground, like living just unwatched. Like here I was, like I'd be, and as part of my thing with the treatment center, I ended up being part of like residential staff there,
Right.
and helping a lot of people. And where I was at the time was called the Mary Lynn Foundation. Had a lot of people literally right off of Skid Row, right off of Skid Row, all types, all classes, races, everything. And I really got to just really meet everybody. And I remember going everywhere. I mean, we would go down. I remember going down to Watts and being shocked that the shopping center was covered with barbed, like steel fences. But I was in there. Like I was taking mass transit. It was a very freeing experience. It was a very interesting experience.
You know what? The bottom line of all of this, it's quite an amazing journey, but you actually are, it's a story of hope. It really is. If anyone's listening who is down or drug addicts or knows someone, it shows what you can become. You're a hopeful guy. You've come out of it to be a functional, happy person, and that's actually the real message.
And this message is just like that. I used to be a hopeless dope addict, and now I'm a dopeless hope addict.
That's beautiful. Actually.
That's really nice. Well, that's true, and that's what I'm getting from all of this.
I appreciate it.
You know,
Listen,
it's not a downer story. It's actually an uplifting story.
I appreciate it. I didn't want to talk
And
about
good
it
for
a
you.
lot, but you're my friends, and I realize that if anything,
I think you should be getting paid to be a consultant for film and TV about life on the streets.
That's a great idea.
Well, there you go.
Absolutely.
You could be a complete...
Because we have to cram all this shit in for 1 hour, but I bet if we got down and dirty, no microphones, you really let it rip.
You could be a great public speaker.
You would put us right there in the streets.
Max, I got some fucking Laura Scudder's potato chips in the trunk of my car. I want you to sign them before we leave.
Laura Scudder's.
Laura Scudder's.
No, you mean
Laura Scudder's.
You mean Pringles.
No,
okay.
Pringles. You can't have that.
So how did you two clowns eventually reunite?
Oh, this is good, and I'll let Lorenzo take that over.
All
This
right,
is
and
fascinating.
Maybe we'll end with this. So I just want to say, John, you not only is it an amazing story, you tell your story really great. You know, you're a great storyteller.
I hope
we took a 30-year break from being with each other
Jesus.
and not doing drugs. And
Well, you were, dude. I was.
that's true.
I was.
We didn't do drugs together.
I took up your slack. Trust me.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I took up all of your slack.
Yes.
No worries.
That's true. I mentioned earlier we met because we have a mutual friend named Alan. Alan had a little sister named Ari. Ari grew up, and Ari just had a 50th birthday party where she invited me and she invited John to go, and we met at her
was at a
party
Wow.
just a few months ago.
At the
Did you
sportsman's
know he
club.
was
At the-
coming?
I did know he was coming.
Wow.
And we haven't seen each other for 30 years.
Were you nervous to see him again?
Not at all. I just didn't know what it was going to be
'Cause
like.
I don't ever want to see people.
I was
from the
open
past
to
come
whatever
in.
John would become. I didn't know a lot of the backstory because when I left and went to go do music and went to college, you know, there was no cell phones and internet, so we just kind of,
Much easier to fall completely out of touch.
we sort of fell completely out of touch. It was never personal,
Right.
but I'm telling you, the moment he walked in the door and we saw each other, it was like 30 years had not passed.
Yeah.
And then we had the best night together, shooting the shit and reliving everything and getting to know this dude. And that's when I said, man, I got a podcast.
Like the next day he called.
And it's
Told
like,
me
Yeah.
I got to have you in here. You have to meet Max. You're awesome. And we just had an amazing night together and kind of rekindled.
So
And
how did
thank
you
God we're
catch
both
up on
alive.
each other's lives in the similar way that
we
we're
really,
doing here?
I got to say something, Max. We really didn't. In other words, a lot of what Lorenzo's hearing right now, and you,
Is that true?
is like the first time he's ever heard any of my stuff. And I didn't.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. Listen, I didn't know what I was going to say here. Look, I did a little background research on you. I did a little bit on the podcast.
Right.
I've heard you guys just shooting the shit. Believe me. Part of me, remember, recovering addict. Part of me wants this whole fucking world to revolve around me.
Right.
Part of me. The other part of me doesn't want any of that. Wants
Right,
just
right.
everything. So
Right.
I'm still in that moment. So it is what it is. I just wanted to come here and just be real. And, I can pretty much say safely that I haven't fronted anybody out who's alive.
Everybody's safe.
And
All the
we
names
just
have been
talked about,
changed to protect the
and
innocent.
if it's of interest to people, great. But I could say that, like I said,
Yeah.
that was a huge component of my life. During
Yeah.
that time, I did some pretty fucking amazing things and had some great accomplishments, but with some great pitfalls. But, I'm very happy. I'm really happy about who I've become and where I am. And it's like at 55, I'm growing up again.
Beautiful.
John, that is a great place to end.
Well, wait a second. I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
Shit.
I have 8,000 more questions. We could do a part two. But John Sr.'s residuals and pension. Who's been getting that?
Gave that to my brother.
Your brother?
Who's getting the money, John?
And I gave it to my brother.
Okay.
But remember, a lot of the stuff that he did was pre-1964.
Right.
And the other stuff that he did, there's some
Right,
money
right,
on it.
right.
But my brother had a stroke a while back. He's
Oh.
doing really good.
Good.
He's doing really well. But, his health was... And my brother was there when I was in the midst of my freaking chaos on and off. And he was always there for me. And I, can say that... we've left some things from the estate and so on, and I think that we've been very equitable with everything. And in that sense, I imagine he'll pass it to me if he ever leaves us. But he's got it.
All right, good.
I have
Zach's been taking care of
but
being on top of it.
like I say, it's really funny because for the first time, about 6 months ago, I had a fan group of the Creature, the Black Lagoon, a guy called the Kilted Creatures. He got a Facebook page. Reached out to me and did a podcast where I was screened. They interviewed me about my father and his
that's
career,
great.
and they put me on a screen in a theater in Florida, like what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
If you could sit in your fucking house and just sit in NoHo and just shoot the shit here on the phone.
No traffic.
So
no crying about
a
dogs.
little different if I have to fly to Florida. Plus, it's fucking Florida. But at any rate, and that was cool. But yeah, anytime like. I love talking about my dad, but I don't live off talk. Like
No,
I don't
no.
like.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, look at this.
No, this
look at
was a
that.
nice balance. We covered Dad, but then we got deep into your shit.
Exactly.
Still want more, but whatever. Well,
There
how
could
long
be
is
more.
it?
there can be another.
Probably 3 weeks. by this
Yeah,
point.
it's about 17 hours at this
Oh
point.
yeah, all right.
All right.
I get it.
I'll gladly come back and talk about anything. At
we
any
could do a
time.
part 2, not necessarily today, but we'll have you back.
Anytime.
There's going to be more to the John Agar, more layers to come.
The saga.
He can just sit in and we'll talk about all kinds of things.
You could be a second co-host. Totally.
I want Max to call his agent because I want to be the homeless consultant or at least a beauty pageant judge. or
There you go.
something.
That's right.
Anything or like I'd like to be like I'd love to be the Michelin Man. I look like him, but like any voiceover work here, fuck it, I'll do it.
Mascot work is good work.
Big back tattoo. That's
Forbidden zone.
John, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, dude,
You were
you're
awesome.
Thank you guys.
Final
for having
thoughts,
me.
Max?
No, he's totally great, and I'm happy. This wine was very good. I got to tell you, with all due respect to Lorenzo, so many of his friends I find insufferable. So to find one who's actually interesting and edgy and down and dirty and more like me is like, oh, what a relief. I mean, do you see who he hangs out with? Have you hung out with him enough since you reunited?
No.
There's Tunuku and Tutaka, and it's just like all of these.
You're going to love Tutaka, by the way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
We
she's
love
I
him.
love Tutaka.
We get together with Spritzo. Spritzo is wonderful. Have you met him? Oh, he is Spritzo. I mean, it's just like you want to die.
I'm a Najalamazel.
Final thoughts, John?
Hey, the thought is this has been a pleasure, man. It's been great hanging out with you guys. I had no idea what to expect. Thank you. I mean, it was fun. I mean, therapeutic too. We realize I've never paid for therapy. I just get therapy when I just spill my shit out anyway. So
As
if
long as
anybody-
you leave as a better
Yeah,
person, it's
there's
all
got to
worth
be
it,
some
man.
catharsis
Well,
involved in
yeah.
all of your life.
Well, you're very honest, and thanks for sharing your
Stay
life with
honest.
us.
got it, man. Thanks. It's been fun.
That's
Definitely.
great. Well, everybody, as usual, thanks for listening.
Have a beautiful Thanksgiving.
Have a good Thanksgiving. We'll be back for episode 28 whenever we decide to do
whenever
so.
we decide.
It's a little
Yes.
family thing, as we like to refer to it as thank you's a given.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks for
Italian.
listening.
Frabados, agaragaragino.
See you next time.